안녕하세요 여러분. Hey guys, how's it going? It's Sean. So things I grew to like about my life in Korea and things I just still can't get used to. For me personally, coming from the US in Philadelphia, if you bump into someone or you're walking too close to someone or you're on the subway and you accidentally just graze someone with your arm, you absolutely 100% have to say, excuse me. And so first coming to Korea, I would take line number 2 in Seoul, the green line, and I would get on and people would bump me, or I'd be on the elevator, or I'd be just waiting somewhere and an old person or even a young person would bump me and not say anything. At first I was really not okay with this because if you do this where I'm from and you don't say excuse me, you're gonna really upset people, and some people might actually say something to you and there would be an issue, okay? The reason why I got used to this and I actually like not saying, sorry after every time you bump someone is because, if you're taking a bus, if you're taking a subway and there's always a lot of people there, if it's always crowded, you're gonna bump somebody. Like, that's obvious. You should expect that every time you get on line number 2 in Seoul. And so saying sorry every time you get bumped seems a little bit unnecessary, especially because almost every time it's accidental. There's so many people in Seoul, I live in Seoul, and not having to say sorry after every single time you bump someone is actually really nice. One thing I can never get used to though is, and I'm sorry my Korean brothers and sisters, goguma on pizza. This is a sin where I'm from. I love pizza, I grew up with pizza, everybody loves pizza, Koreans love pizza, Europeans love pizza, but goguma on pizza, I just can't get used to it. Anyway, so in this video I interviewed people from all around the world, asking them the question, what's something you grew to like in Korea and what's something you still can't get used to? I got some really interesting answers. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin.
I'm from Japan.
I'm from New York City.
I'm from Boston. I wouldn't say I never liked it, but in the US we hug when we greet people, and I really like the bowing. Like, I really like it. Or even just like, 안녕하세요. We also have this weird thing that we like smile at people when you recognize them, you just go. And that makes me so uncomfortable, and I so much prefer just bowing. It's like a respectful way of saying I acknowledge you, but not inciting a need to have small talk. Yeah. Like, I love that there's no small talk here too.
There's a lot of things here that are different from America, especially different from Brazil. Because like in my culture, like in Brazil, like we like to be like show affection, like give people hugs and do that. I know in Korea it's like kind of a big no-no to do like touching and all that. And so I guess that's one thing where like I kind of feel uncomfortable. But then again, it's not my culture and I have to be respectful towards their culture. Yeah. And also adapt to it since I'll be living here for a year.
In Japan, I really hesitate to ask some questions to people, but right here, feel more comfortable. Like, I asked Ajumma, Ajoshi, how to go, where's this super small like local supermarket. There was so nice.
Can't do that in Japan?
I think, but people's like busy. I'm from Tokyo, so because of that, people like this way.
Yeah, they go out of their way to help you out.
Ooh,
super nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're from Belgium.
I don't have many bad experiences here at all, but I think I also have like more positive stereotypes associated with me because we're from Europe, we're young females. I think we don't come off as threatening or unkind, or I don't think there are many bad stereotypes about us. That's one of the reasons like we don't experience many discomfort of that.
So you don't feel like anybody's like scared of you?
Not scared, but people are definitely shy to talk to you because they're not confident in their English. Well, it's not true. They speak it perfectly most of the time, or at least you can have a decent conversation. But yeah, people are shy to talk to you.
The thing that I don't like so much is that I just can't blend in, People see me from a mile away because of my hair, and it's like if you're having a bad day or you don't look your best, you want to kind of just disappear on the bus, but then there are people staring at you on the bus, so you can't really mix. Of course, that's normal as a foreigner.
Hey, how's it going? Where are you from?
The US. In Korea, you can pretty much walk almost anywhere. I mean, you can take other public transportation, but at first I didn't really like the walking because where I'm from, I drive everywhere because you couldn't get away with walking. But I've grown to really like it. It's a good form of easy exercise. It's a good way to see a lot of the city and see things you wouldn't see if you were driving or taking the subway or a bus. For something that I didn't really grow to enjoy is it's actually really lonely here if you don't already have friends. It's really hard to make friends.
Did you come alone?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say you're more of an introvert?
Yes.
Do you think that that's possibly influencing the difficulty of making friends?
Yeah, because I know other people that I go to school with, they go out and they do make Korean friends because they go looking for them. I guess I haven't, because they have language exchanges and like meeting at clubs and like talking to strangers. It's easy-ish to make friends, but sometimes they're questionable friends if you meet them there. But
from the Netherlands. I was getting kind of ready to just have a difficult time making friends, especially Korean friends. And I was actually surprised of how easy for me it was to get some friends and to meet people and for them to also have a comfortable amount of English that they can speak.
Oh, so you're kind of surprised as to how well Koreans speak English, young
Yeah,
Koreans.
as well. Yeah.
Hey guys, how's it going? Where are you from?
Friends.
England.
Friends.
Everything's quite cheap. Like eating out, like drinks, Daiso. I bought like 10 things and it cost me £6 or something. So I didn't realise it would be quite so hot and humid. I knew it was like rainy season, but even so, it's more hot than I thought.
I'm from the Netherlands and I really wasn't so sure about the elevation differences, the way the hills flow and everything. But it ends up being a really charming thing, I think. I think it really adds to Korea as a general thing, especially in Seoul. Like you wouldn't think that hills and mountainsides in the middle of a city works, but it does work. It's pretty crazy.
That is the most unique answer I've ever heard. That's so interesting. You're talking just about the amount of slopes and hills and the general mountainous nature of Korea, right?
Yeah, because I'm from the Netherlands, I'm not used to any hills whatsoever, basically.
Netherlands is flat. For the most part.
Essentially, it's just flat. So I'm never so sure when I go to a region that is mountainous, like, am I going to like it? Because it's going to be a lot of uphill and downhill. But it's really not that bad. And honestly, I think it adds a certain charm to the region.
Totally agree. Unless if you're walking up a hill carrying groceries on an icy road to get to your home.
Don't do that. just don't is my advice, yeah.
Just let the delivery guys deal with that.
Hi, I'm from Paraguay. When I first came here, I thought the food was really sweet.
Goguma pizza.
Yeah. I became used to like the goguma or like the 옥수수 bean everywhere. And then compared to my country, like most of our food are like extremely salted.
There's not really a whole lot of room of like social spaces where you can just go up to random people and talk. I can't really approach someone in the street and talk to them like how like you can make small talk in the US or in Brazil. And so it is kind of like awkward at times just being out in Korea. But at the same time, you also have to figure out where these social spaces are, where you can go out and meet new people and you can go out and just talk with people and like make friends and go out together.
Sure. Interesting. So in Brazil or the US, this is just easier to do in general. Like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I would say so because it's always like, you know, like you can be in an elevator and sometimes like something happens and you can just like make a comment about it and the other person can join in. But like usually if someone falls down on the street, a lot of people just kind of like just shift around and just move past. Just completely ignores like what happened in front of them.
Sure.
And just like move straight past.
Yeah. Maybe you're an extrovert. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean.
So you like the connection with people.
Yeah.
Even people you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been asked a lot like what my MBTI is, and so I found out I was an ENFJ, which is like one of the most extroverted personalities. So I was like, yeah, I guess I am an extrovert.
I'm from the UK, England to be exact. I think maybe Korean bathrooms, the wet room, because in the UK, the shower and the toilet are separate. The water only goes in the shower, in the bath, whereas in Korea, the water just goes everywhere. All in the bathroom, just up the walls. In the toilet, on the toilet, everywhere. And you know, originally I found that kind of a bit annoying, and it was just everything was damp. But now it's like, I don't know, it's kind of easy just to clean stuff now because you just put a shower head up against the wall and then, you know, it's clean.
So true. What do you think in general about the houses and the types of houses in Seoul?
They're quite small. Apartments aren't that attractive. I mean, generally they're not attractive anyway, but...
Why, just too small?
The exterior is kind of just very concrete.
I guess in England you have like a lot of like real old housing.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah, whereas like in Korea it's just very much like concrete blocks.
Utilitarian.
Yeah.
Just for purpose.
Yeah. I guess originally I didn't really like that, but now, I don't know, I've just grown accustomed to it, so I don't really care.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks fine to me now.
Well, I've been to your place though, And I think you have like a really modern new place.
Yeah. The interior.
That must be nice.
The interior is lovely. Yeah, like the interior is really nice. I feel like in Korea, they do a lot of more renovating. You know, like everything is made new.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, they just keep the same old crap.
But there's a charm to the old stuff, right?
Yeah.
What do you think like the positive of renovating all the time would be?
It's clean.
Right.
And you know,
functional.
Yeah, and if you keep using the same stuff over and over, it gets kind of grimy.
So then, what's the difference between something getting grimy and used too much versus like a nice old house that has charm?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really know exactly, but I guess from the materials. I'm not a housing expert. It's hard. But,
why are we using those materials everywhere? That's fine. So you made a really interesting comparison between the hyper modern and like very renovated, and it works really well, versus the charm of maybe your old England place, and both have positives.
Yeah.
And perhaps both have negatives too. The older stuff sometimes doesn't work as well. Hard to get replacements and parts for that. Newer stuff lacks a little bit of that soul.
Yes.
Soul in soul.
Yes, I completely agree.
I'm from Seattle, Washington. Like before coming here, I'd heard that the classes are like really brutal and that it's really like tough to get through and like not as many resources maybe. But like coming from the class I was just in, it was super like very chill, and the professor was like very easygoing and very kind. So that was very nice to learn, at least for that class, getting to know more.
So you're saying that Korea kind of has a stereotype of being just really rigorous.
I think a lot of Asian countries, like the study culture is very like known to be intense, but not as intense as I had heard.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Did you enjoy this video? If so, please let me know down in the comments. Once again, I'm Sean, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Hello everyone, and welcome back to episode 5 of the Natural Talk series. I'm Sean, and I'm here with Chad.
Hello everybody, I'm Chad. I'm from the US. Looking forward to another great talk.
Awesome. So, today we're going to talk about dealing with stress.
Ooh.
Do you get stressed a lot, Chad?
I find that in certain situations, I get very stressed, but in other situations that might stress other people out, I find that I'm able to brush it off and really sort of not get stressed out by certain situations.
Yeah. Do you have a recent experience where you got really stressed?
I did, yes. I was having an issue at work, and so I found that I was under a lot of stress just due to a project that was happening at work. And so that was a really stressful couple of months, just trying to work through all of those problems. And yeah, fortunately it turned out fine. But yeah, it was quite a stressful period.
Oh no. Well, I'm glad it's fine now. So when you get stressed, how do you deal with it? How do you relieve stress?
In general, my stress relief method that I've come to realize over the years has been exercise. And so I find that I'm able to relieve my stress by working out, going to the gym, or doing some other form of exercise. And then within that, the most effective way for me to relieve my stress has been to run. And so I'm a very avid runner. I run, very long distances. When I go for a run, I find that I'm really able to clear my head and relieve some of that stress that I'm receiving from whatever situation that's going on in the rest of my life. Whether it's just thinking about how I'm able to solve the issue while I'm running, using up my energy while I'm out running is really able to relieve some of my stress.
Yeah. For me, when I get stressed, 2 things that really help me are taking a walk. Walks are so good for me, kind of maybe similar to your running.
Sure.
I have a really beautiful park near my house. I go to the park, I just walk. Just, the calm speed that you walk at, and you're seeing the nature, you're getting fresh air, and again, you're using that energy. Like if something very stressful happens, I would say that would be a great way for me to kind of start to at least relieve a little bit of the stress. Not to mention, I feel like walking helps me to process information and to think better. I don't know what it is. It's like you moving your legs back and forth and you're just going for a walk, and you can actually think better than if you were just to sit in your chair.
Right.
My second preferred method of relieving stress is to either listen to music or play music. So I have a guitar and I love playing guitar. I was in a band actually when I was living in the United States.
Oh wow.
So I have a very intimate relationship with music. It definitely helps me to relieve stress, to listen to one of my favorite songs or to just jam along with a rhythmic song. So I would say these are my two preferred methods of relieving stress.
I think a commonality here between the two of us and our stress relief methods is there's an output. Playing music is definitely an output. There's an output that you're creating, and it sort of acts as a sort of vessel to relieve the stress. Taking a walk is much the same way. The output is the energy that you're expending to take a walk, and the same with me and my running or going to the gym. I'm using that energy. The output is the energy that I'm expending, and that acts as the sort of stress relief.
Awesome. That's a really good point. Yeah, kind of releasing that energy, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. My question now is, in what circumstances would you be motivated or stimulated to call up a friend or, meet someone and talk out your problem?
I think in my situation, I'm very lucky to have several friends who I stay in touch with almost daily, if not weekly. And I find that I'm able to very frequently talk through some of the problems that I'm having, whether it's in my personal life or in my professional life. And so, sort of in tandem with my other stress relief methods, the running or working out or whatever it might be, I find that I'm also simultaneously having those conversations with people to sort of talk through the issue, how I might be able to resolve it.
I'm actually very similar. Like, I love bouncing ideas off of friends, and also just the act of speaking is very helpful to my thought process and processing of ideas. Like the act of speaking is, in a way, like another form of thinking, right? So I also have a few friends that I sometimes call up if I am feeling stressed about a certain situation or something. But I think we're missing the most important part here. Yes, of course, it's really important to relieve the stress in a healthy way. But I think we're missing the most important thing, which is deal with the problem, right?
Sure.
So we have to deal with whatever is stressing you, whether that be someone rude at work or a project that I just have to finish, or a difficult decision I have to make. It's easy for them to look at that as the target that has to be resolved, the problem in and of itself. But we have stress for a reason, because it's telling us, it's notifying us that we need to fix something, right? So definitely, I would say, resolve that problem, that stress in your life. And once that's resolved, then it's really good to think about relieving stress. That being said, there are some things in life that we don't have control over, that you can't resolve. You can't predict if you're going to get injured, or you can't really control the circumstances at work sometimes. It's just out of our control,
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a key difference between stress and pressure. And so some people really thrive when they have to work under pressure for a certain project at work, or perhaps something is going on in their personal life where they're under pressure to do something. Some people really thrive when it comes to those situations, but I think that's very distinct from stress.
Yes.
And receiving stress from a certain situation. As I think about it, I'm not really sure that there's any situation in which I would consider being under stress to be a good thing.
Yeah.
That almost always seems to be a negative thing, where, as you just said, removing the source of the stress would be the absolute best method to deal with it, rather than addressing the symptoms as the problem in and of itself.
Yeah. So like, if you go into a new situation with an open mind and you're like, okay, it's okay if I get stressed. Like, of course there's going to be things that I want to change or do better, or, challenges that arise. I think it's probably a healthier mindset, but we're all human. And we all get stressed. I wanted to add one more thing, though, that I really like to do, and I recommend people to do if you're feeling stressed, and that's writing. I'm a big fan of writing journals, writing lists, writing things out. As we were mentioning before, it's really nice to talk to friends, to ping pong ideas off of them. Sometimes you don't have a friend around though, and like you're really stressed in the moment. What can you do? Well, I highly recommend writing in a journal, just on your computer or even on your phone. Just the act of writing something out really puts it into words, exactly what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And I find that a lot of times when I write, I discover new things, connections that I didn't realize, and B, I realize that the problem I was stressed about really isn't that big of a problem, you know? So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Yeah, I think that's really healthy as well. I think for me, I'm not particularly a prolific writer. I don't find myself keeping a journal or anything like that. However, I do find myself keeping lists, like you mentioned, or perhaps a list of goals that I want to achieve and then tracking the progress that I'm making towards those goals.
Yes.
And I find that discussing then those goals and the progress I'm making towards those goals helps to put some of these things in perspective when it comes to stress, and I can sort of realize that, like you just said, what I'm stressing about in the grand scheme really isn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
And it helps me to sort of deal with the issue that I'm having.
Thank you for sharing that, Chad. I think that's a good place to end for this episode. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. Once again, I'm Sean.
And I'm Chad.
See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
안녕하세요, 여러분. Hey guys, how's it going? It's Sean. So these days, a lot of violent crime is seemingly being reported in South Korea, with particular emphasis on the knife incidents and all the copycat crimes. So in this video, I asked many foreigners from all around the world how safe they feel in South Korea in 2023. Without further ado, let's begin.
I'm from Japan.
I'm from New York City. I'm from Boston.
How safe do you feel in Korea 2023?
I would say pretty safe.
Okay.
Definitely more safe than America. Definitely more safe than Brazil, actually.
Of course, it's not the best kind of news to hear about the knife stabbing incident, so I feel for the victims, but at the same time, I myself did not feel more dangerous being here.
I love New York City, so I'm not repping New York City like in a bad way, but we do have a lot going on in the subways and stuff. Crimes, a lot, violence, acts of violence. So being from there, like here, I'm like, I know it's like the likelihood of something happening to me right now in this moment is a lot smaller than if I was walking back home at night in like New York City, like coming home.
I feel pretty safe, and I think a large part of that is that there's a lot of cameras pretty much everywhere, and that's not really a thing in the Netherlands, right? So in the Netherlands, it feels like if you go into some dark alley, you might get jumped, but here it doesn't give that same vibe to me, at least.
Despite the news.
Yeah, despite the news. I've read the news and I've heard about it through other fellow students.
So I've been here 2 months, and just personally, I feel like in the US, right, like we get catcalled.
Yeah.
But I think just the overall like clothing, you have to dress more conservative. I feel really uncomfortable like showing more skin. I don't know if it's because in the US I'm used to it, but here I feel like people like look at me because I'm a foreigner, and then they look at what I'm wearing, and I've gotten a lot of like bad looks from maybe like older people. But again, I don't want to generalize because it's like some people are super sweet and don't care.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like a cultural thing, but I do feel like I already stand out as it is.
Sure.
So I'm trying to do my best not to, so I don't feel as safe as I would have thought. And again, it's not to say Korea is not safe, because there's a lot of places in the US I wouldn't feel comfortable, even in Boston, walking down the street. Like you could get shot, things like that. Here, I don't think that happens, but I think like on the woman perspective and being a foreigner, that is a very unique experience. And again, people are going to say different things. So
I'm from Japan, but I feel like in terms of women's safety, South Korea is more like feels safer, because in Japan, inside the train, some people has no manner, no education, and touch women's body easily. So I feel more safe.
I'm from Seattle, Washington. I haven't been here very long, but I've probably feel safer here just by myself. But with the stabbings, I definitely have not been like going out by myself as much, but I'm not super worried about it, as that's like probably a more common thing to happen in Seattle.
Hi, I'm George and I'm from the UK, England to be exact. I've lived in Korea for about 7.5 years. I think it's really shocking because Korea it's a really safe country and this kind of thing doesn't often happen. Also, one of these incidents occurred near my place, so that was really, really scary. I still feel quite safe because, you know, if something is just reported a lot in the news, you kind of get a sense that it occurs more frequently than it actually does.
Personally, I feel very safe, especially compared to back home. I live in Brussels, a big city.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go out at night, not even with a group of girlfriends.
Really?
Really.
Why? What do you have to worry about?
I constantly check if my phone and my wallet are still there. Here, I can just leave them on a table, come back 10 minutes later, they will be there. Yeah, just worrying of being harassed, really. Here, I have no worry of that at all.
I think I feel a lot safer here walking around, but also because there's so much people still hanging out in the streets at night, so much young people, older people, families, that you don't feel like you have to watch your back all the time.
Hey, how's it going? Where are you from?
The US. I haven't had any bad encounters at all.
Yeah.
And I've been here a long time, so I've gone out and done a whole bunch of things, but yeah, I haven't had any bad encounters and I've felt pretty safe.
I'm from France. This kind of accident with knife that always happen. So I really feel more safety here. Like in the street, I really feel confident. Even if I'm dressed like with a little skirt, I don't care.
Yeah, I feel really safe here. I mean, walking around by yourself, like doing everything on your own in the middle of the night. Everyone's like been pretty friendly as well. Like it's not intimidating. And I'd say the same in the UK, in the city where I live. But compared to like London, like another like city of a similar size, I'd say here feels much safer.
Yeah. Do you think though that because you're a man and you're quite tall that...
Oh, for sure.
In England, well, it depends where you go. There are some areas where gangsters operate, so I wouldn't feel
Peaky
very
Blinders.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe they're still about, who knows. yeah, those kinds of areas I wouldn't feel very confident going to. I mean, I was chased once, even though I'm from the countryside, so I got the train home and I was walking home from the train station, and I live in a very, very small village, and suddenly like a group of blokes just started chasing me, shouting expletives at me, and fortunately a guy that I knew drove past and gave me a lift, so I was saved.
What were they angry at?
I think it's because I was wearing skinny jeans.
Is that it?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, it seemed to upset them, so.
Hey, what's up? I'm from Paraguay.
How long have you been in Korea?
A little bit over 4 years now. I don't usually go out alone at night anymore. I became just a little bit more wary of my surroundings, especially because I'm a woman. But at the same time, knowing where I come from, it's still technically safe, I would say. Comparing to Korea, I guess you could say the crime rate is way higher.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I can just walk around at night and not really have a worry about if someone's just gonna attack me. Because in Brazil, you know, it's like kind of like it's like a unwritten curfew. If you're out past a certain hour, it's like you're a target to be robbed. In America too, like you know, you could be a victim of some sorts, especially if you're out in the streets in the middle of night in like a city. But I think here in Korea, it's definitely a different vibe with just the safety, because you know, there's CCTV everywhere. There's just more police presence. They're always patrolling. And honestly, the culture here, not a lot of people go out of their way to just attack you out of nowhere. And also, like, there's not weapons on the streets. There's not guns. There's not knives. They're really strict on all those things.
Yeah.
And so I do feel more safe in Korea in 2023 than...
Despite all of the new news coming out of the violence and whatnot,
Yeah.
you still feel safe.
I still feel safe.
Cool. Now, you were saying you feel less safe dressing freely
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
because you get unwanted attention.
Yeah. I almost...
Not necessarily catcalls, but just stares.
Yeah, I get like looked at, I get walked, like people follow me. Again, on the campus, like I'm really lucky to have a really safe campus like Solgang. Like this feels comfortable, especially because there seems to be some already like level of respect, but especially like when I'm taking the subway in Hongdae and things like that, like I get looked at a lot.
That's interesting because it feels like Hongdae, Itaewon, even Gangnam perhaps are quite international neighborhoods, so you still feel like that in Hongdae?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
Korea, like in some sense, when it comes to crimes, is still like, I would say it's safer than my country, but then in some other ways, it's like some new things that I never thought would be like concern became one.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like stalking is kind of common here. Like guys following. I've never experienced that back home.
Yeah.
And then I started to, well, when I came here, I think that became a new thing for me to start to worry about. And
so it's happened to you?
Yeah, it's happened to me multiple times.
Of course, like no country is ever free of crime. Even though like Korea is a super safe city, of course there's going to be incidents where like stabbings occur and different crimes occur. But at the same time, I think Korea does a really good job of keeping everyone else safe. Of course, like, you know, not all incidents can be stopped, but they do a really good job at making sure that nothing happens.
Right.
So that everyone stays safe.
Cool.
I was gonna say, we're used to having school shooting drills in high school in the US. Like, I'm prepared in the US for anyone to come up with an automatic and shoot me in any public place. So as horrible as the knife incident is, or I don't know much about it, I feel like that is something that in the US would not even make the news. And again, it's not, like, I think it's great that something like this is getting a lot of attention maybe here, because it should. People are dying. I mean, that's horrible. But I'm being from the US, that's not really,
it's not news.
I think that doesn't scare me.
It's a very sad, like, an unfortunate situation, but I think like just both of us being from the US, something like that wouldn't make the news. Like, as cause
not newsworthy.
Yeah, it happens so frequently, or it may even like make the news, but so many things happen, you get a lot of information overload. So
desensitized.
Yeah, you're kind of, that's exactly what it is. I'm like very desensitized to it, but more so the act, not so like people dying. I think that's very unfortunate, and it's sad for the families, or people being injured, that's sad for the families.
Sure.
Compared to Japan, like government really listen to the, kunmin, the national people in Korea. So like if there's something big is happen, Korean people is gonna shouting, protest, and again the government is gonna prepare like a solve really quickly. So I think it feels okay.
Would you recommend people to travel to South Korea, despite all this?
I would. I think it's very cool here. It's really different from where I'm from, so it's just a really cool new experience.
It's still safe. It's just, unfortunately, these attacks have started, but I think the chances of you actually being there when it happens are pretty slim. So I think you're okay.
I mean, there are anomalies everywhere. There's crime everywhere. Crime is going to be inevitable to any place where there's people. So I'm definitely not going to be like, don't come here, like, because at the end of the day, we should at least acknowledge that this country is significantly more safe than the country where we're from.
Yes, because it's safe, the culture is beautiful, people
Also,
are friendly.
If you're just here on holiday, you're not gonna have these problems of being stressed about your work like the Koreans themselves are. So if you're just here on holiday, it's very good. But it's indeed something that keeps me back from wanting to live and work here.
The work-life balance?
Yes.
Interesting. I want to say one thing before I end this video though. One thing that is for sure is that mental health is on the decline. Depression and suicide statistics reflect this. In my opinion, increased drug use and violent crime are also symptoms of declining mental health. With the isolation we endured during lockdown and the crazy inflation we're going through right now, it's no wonder that mental health is on a decline. So I just want to say that I hope all of you watching have a good community of people around you, have a good plan and hope for the future, and are taking care of your bodies and minds as much as you can. All right, everybody, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching this video. Once again, I'm Sean, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Hey guys, how's it going? So I'm with some good friends of mine. They're visiting from LA. Who the hell are you?
My name is Sam.
Annyeong mama, Blake.
I said annyeong mama. Sam is my closest friend in the US and he lives in LA. We went to university together and have stayed in touch ever since. Last time I visited LA, I met Blake, who also lives there, and I'm just really excited that they finally got a chance to visit me here in Korea. So, you've been in Korea for 8-9 days now. You've been only in Seoul. You know, you're a psychologist, you're a lawyer, and you're also in the music industry as well in LA. I want to hear about your impressions of South Korea, the things you liked, the things you didn't like so much, the things that surprised you. What did you think of Korea before coming here?
Didn't know a lot about Korea other than what you've told me, since Sean is a good friend of mine. But I have started watching some K-dramas. So I think most of what I knew about Korea was whatever was shown in these K-dramas.
Yeah, so I knew about K-pop, K-barbecue, and the movie Parasite, which is the best film ever made.
You like it?
It's incredible, yeah.
Yeah. If you could summarize your experience so far in Korea in 1 or 2 sentences, what would they be?
Yeah, I think a very intelligent use of other cultures, like kind of taking good things out of different cultures and then like making it your own and embodying just like a creative spirit. I do see a lot of Western influence in Seoul, so done better than what you see in America.
Do you have any specific examples of that? Like, okay, wow, they've taken that from another culture, but they're just doing it really well.
I'd say K-pop sounds very much like early 90s, early 2000s R&B. So that would probably be the quickest example. Yeah, food, like you see the Korean fried chicken sandwiches, which is like hands down better than any chicken sandwich we have in LA.
There is like a level of authenticity that I'm getting from the people. Again, the sort of attention to detail, uniqueness, and the aesthetic. Like so many beautiful cafes that we've walked into. The cafe culture here has been something that sticks in my mind. Just gorgeous attention to kind of, you know, curating a particular aesthetic and really paying attention to making things the best that they can, it seems. And yeah, I think so with the cafe culture and the food, as Blake said, yeah, just really stand out.
When Koreans decide to do something, they're gonna go 150% in on it. They're not just gonna make a cafe, they're gonna make the most aesthetically pleasing cafe with the most fancy drinks.
Nothing can really be that subpar and survive. Like there's so many cafes. Why would I go to this cafe when there's, you know, 10 other ones within the same area that are way better? But I think that's good because that competition makes it so that everything is the best, seemingly. It's not a lot of mediocrity.
So yeah, what shocked you? Like, damn, this was awesome. This was amazing, or this is so different than I imagined. Like anything in that realm for you guys?
Knotted donuts. And Songsu.
The neighborhood Songsu.
Yeah, that was, Sam and I talked about this. LA is cool, but it's not on that scale. Like that neighborhood, we walked for 5 or 6 hours and we're just blown away by the level of the cafes, the like design in the neighborhood and the city. It was just like such a phenomenal neighborhood. I didn't want it to end. I didn't want to reach the end of it, and there was a lot there to cover and explore.
Yeah. And it's also right next to Seoul Forest too, which is like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
You got the green, you got the grass, you can get some fresh air.
We saw some beautiful butterflies in a greenhouse. That park was incredible.
Yeah, something that really surprised me was actually how good the music has been in most of the cool places that we've been, with the exception of the fact that they've been playing Bruno Mars like at a lot of maybe a little bit more like mainstream or sort of ubiquitous places. But for example, in Songsu or in some of the cafes that we've been to, they're playing a lot of Western music, actually, a lot of these cafes, but they're almost playing like better or more interesting or, you know, unique sort of indie Western music than even what is curated like at some cafes or like cool retail stores in LA. And so that was really surprising.
And so I think some Koreans might be watching like, why are you guys knocking on Bruno Mars? Why is that weird for you to hear as an American, as Americans?
He kind of had his time in the sun in America 4.5, 5 years ago, maybe even longer. So it's just interesting to see him being played everywhere when he's kind of played out in America.
What were you kind of less enthusiastic about? And I'm asking this, I'm putting them on the spot because I know that not every country is perfect. And I think, you know, the viewers want to hear, you know, some of the things you were not as crazy about, because there's a lot of content on YouTube that's like, oh, Korea is amazing, Korea is the best, everything is perfect, and I think that's less interesting. I want a more well-rounded review.
There's kind of an odor when you walk around the city of maybe sewage. It's not the whole time, but sometimes you get different pockets of it. It's also insanely humid and hot. And it did rain maybe 2 or 3 of the days we were here.
Yeah.
I personally enjoy rain, but I think those would be the knocks that I have to give because there's a gun to my head.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is necessarily a bad thing, but me personally, when I travel somewhere, I really want to experience something very novel and new and different. And I think Korea is very much like a fusion of like, you know, the East and the West, perhaps more so than maybe even some other Asian countries. And so, you know,
more so than Japan?
More so than Japan, more so than China, you know, and those are really the major other 2 Asian countries I've been to, but I'd venture to say maybe some other parts of Southeast Asia as well. But I think that, you know, the attention to and the really kind of the, dare I say, the worship of the West, you know, and how that is influenced and been integrated into a lot of the culture that we're talking about, I think is both pro and con, honestly, because some of it I really like to see, because I like to see, again, I talked about the music, you know, and all these other things. But then some of it is like, oh, sometimes I walk around and I feel like I might just be in K-Town in Los Angeles, right? And not necessarily in South Korea. And so, again, some people might really like that and that might make them feel comfortable. So it could be a pro, you know. But, you know, for me, it just,
I'll take a little bit of responsibility for that, though, because I definitely curated pretty much most of our activity lists, our to-do lists, and I took you to my favorite restaurants, my favorite cafes. There are museums, there are more traditional neighborhoods even in Seoul, and of course, outside of Seoul is much more traditional Korean culture. But I hear what you're saying. You wish you could have gotten a little bit more of a taste of traditional Korea. But I think that's a valid feedback in general, because at least in Seoul and the neighborhoods, you know, Hongdae, Itaewon, Gangnam, they are quite developed and Western, and they're all about super hyper modern.
And the grass is always greener, obviously. We live in America, so maybe we are not charmed as much by Western, you know, sensibilities, and we are looking for some more, you know, something different. Yeah.
So tell me about the Korean words that you learned.
Yeah, so I have a poor memory, so I'm gonna be reading the most important words I learned in Korean. And second off, I want to tell you that before coming to Korea and hanging out with Sean Pablo, I wasn't able to speak English. It's not my first language, but after spending time with him, I now have adopted the fluency of a native speaker, I believe. So thank you for that also.
Do you hear that, everyone? These are the results you can expect if you study with me. Here is the perfect example. Okay.
And so back to Korean. Gojo byung
Oh, and then I also learned 예뻐요 and mildang.
Yeah.
And sense.
Sense.
And vlog.
Oh yeah.
Vlog.
How about thank you?
감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Oh, your pronunciation got better, Blake. How about hello? You guys know hello?
안녕하세요.
Ooh, cool.
한국은 짜다.
한국은 쩔어. Yeah.
한국은 짜다.
Nice.
And then here, one more. 재수 없는. Yeah, so another thing that we really enjoyed is just meeting your girlfriend, Sean. You know, I've heard so much about her, you know, just being in the States, and to just finally meet her and spend time with her and kind of get essentially like a native Korean's perspective on the things that we've been doing, you know, hanging out. Obviously, she's been really great in sort of teaching us and providing some context to, you know, some of the experiences that we've been having here in Korea. So yeah, it's just been lovely meeting her. She is amazing. I would highly recommend you guys to go check out her YouTube channel as well and get some, you know, more lifestyle vlogs.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get her in trouble, but she definitely is the one who taught us all of our amazing cuss words.
Thank you so much, guys, for this interview. Thank you guys for watching. And I hope you like this video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. See you later. Bye. 우리나라에도 이런 게 있었으면 좋겠다.
The kimchi, like all the fermented stuff, we don't have that back home.
I like how they get to play music just like on the streets because we don't really have that in Singapore. You have to have like licenses to bus, so.
The streets are definitely more packed, but nobody gets in your way. I feel like in Toronto, people are constantly bumping into me. I feel like everybody's more organized here.
I really like how lively the streets are here. People singing on the streets and playing music and everything, while back home it's just people walking and shopping and doing their own thing.
The culture in general, I guess. I mean, it's really nice to see people so cool and down to earth here. You know, I mean, we get a lot of that in Brooklyn too, but it's a little bit rougher. So, I mean, I guess that's one thing just off the top of my head.
What are some things in your country that you wish were in Korea?
More diversity, maybe? It's like pretty homogenous in Korea.
It's a little bit more multicultural. Like, nothing's in English, so I'm lost.
I'm vegetarian, so I kind of wish there was more availability of vegetarian food here.
Oh man, some Brooklyn food, some pizza.
I'm so curious, during your time here, you're hanging out with Koreans, you're making Korean friends.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like the difference in communication style?
They're direct. They're really honest and direct, but sometimes it can hurt you a little bit.
Let's say I ask them how this outfit looks on me. They'll be like, no. Can you try that one on?
I think it's more like in a helpful way. They're gonna be like, it's not gonna look good, so just like change, go with something else.
Yeah, I remember a lot of instances of them being very direct. Whenever you miss practices sometime, or like you're not there, they'll ask you directly like, why we're not there, why you're not responding to messages, why didn't you tell me you weren't gonna come?
Right now, I was just buying makeup, and the girls are like, oh my God, you look so tired. And I don't know if it was true, but it was true. I was tired.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to hear that. Now I buy some makeup for today because I don't want to look tired anymore.
But I really think that it has to do with how they were growing up in South Korea. In South Korea, people talk a lot about physique. We saw advertisement about plastic surgery, yes.
Appearance, a lot about appearance. You know?
Yeah, a lot of those things.
안녕하세요 여러분, 저는 션입니다. So recently I did 2 polls on my channel to see what kind of videos you guys want me to make. Both times I did the poll, you guys voted for the same video. Times I've benefited and struggled in Korea due to my non-Korean identity. Also guys, I want to say that if you're currently studying English, I highly recommend you join my channel membership. Click the button down below to learn more. This could potentially be a controversial video, but you guys wanted to see it, so please keep an open mind when watching. So I'll start by saying that there are many advantages you could get by being a foreigner living in Korea. Just by looking different, you could get jobs as extras in films, in TV shows. You could be a foreign model or actor. You can teach your native language in Korea, potentially. I'll say though, in my personal experience, I received the most benefits when I learned how to speak Korean. For me, I'm in a unique position now because I'm a native English speaker and I've been living in Korea for a while. I speak Korean, so I'm given some unique opportunities. I'm sometimes asked to go on Korean TV shows or YouTube videos as the Korean-speaking American. It's almost like being the authority of America in Korea. On the flip side, I also get some opportunities representing Korea. One time I got an opportunity to go to the US for a conference and talk about Korean culture and the Korean language. So it's really cool to have this kind of like fusion identity, you know? In Korea, I'm the American. In America, I'm the guy who speaks Korean and knows a lot about Korea. Anyway, let's see what other people have to say about this topic. Hey, how's it going? What's your name? Where are you from?
I'm Bart and I'm from the Netherlands.
So what are some times when you've benefited and some times when you kind of felt a disadvantage being a non-Korean person in Korea?
I always feel that I benefit when I speak to Koreans in Korean. I can give you a good example. So I'm a YouTuber and I film a lot on the streets of Seoul. One of the things that I like to do is talk to random people and do a short interview. Of course in Korean as much as possible. So sometimes I have a guide with me when I film, a Korean guide. And then whenever we approach people, they do it the Korean way. So it becomes like, 조회성 하는데. And then they really carefully introduce each other, they lower their voice, and it takes quite a long time before they get to the point. While when I'm alone or with another foreigner, we just go like, hey, what's going on? Tell me about the neighborhood. Or what is your job? What are you doing here? Where do you live? We don't go the formal way. We just make it casual. And it's interesting because we know that Koreans do it differently. But still, when we do it our way, we create a really comfortable setting somehow.
It almost seems like this disarms the other Korean person. It's like, okay, well, if you're not going to follow the rules, I'm not going to follow the rules, and let's just talk openly. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct. It's an icebreaker. I remember another time when I met my grandmother-in-law, who passed away now. So I had to convince them that I would be a good husband to their granddaughter. But I thought it was a good strategy to kind of bombard her with questions about her, like show interest who she is as a person. And that went from how old are you to like what was your dream when you were young, and did you kind of live up on that dream? And then my wife Ria later told me like, hey Bart, I heard things from my grandmother that I never knew, because she probably never asked those questions.
I think it's common in Korean culture. Of course, not all Koreans do this, but I've seen this a lot with my Korean friends. It's like when I'm with my family, we talk about family things, don't go too deep. When I'm at work, we talk about work things. But if you, Bart, go in there and you're like, you know what was your dream as a kid, Grandma? You know, that's kind of like not a topic of conversation that they would normally talk about, but perhaps it's really like fresh for them to talk about these kind of things. I guess you have to be careful not to be rude and...
Of course, and I try to ask those questions in a proper way, like not like... 나이가 뭐예요? Like,
할머니 나이가 뭐야?
And I think that's what foreigners often unintentionally do. They technically are kind of rude on paper, but you can see that they have good intentions and they mean it well. And then Koreans are like, they can feel their good intentions, so they don't really care. That's what I think.
Hey, how's it going? What's your name? Where are you from?
My name is Chad. I'm from the United States. I think one of the biggest benefits of being a foreigner in South Korea is that you aren't necessarily treated like Koreans treat each other. And so that can be a good thing or a bad thing, but particularly in situations where you might not want to be bothered by a Korean. So perhaps somebody's trying to sell you something, or they want to strike up conversation about something that you're just truly not interested in. It's very easy to sort of bypass that by playing the foreigner card. And sort of yes, exactly. Pretending that you can't speak Korean.
Hey, how's it going? What's your name? Where are you from?
I'm Fee and I'm from England. I know that this is like a huge privilege card, and I appreciate the fact that like it is so easy that I will never not be employed in this country unless I choose not to be. Because I am a holder of a powerful passport, and it's one of the mandated 7 countries for teaching English. Teaching English is one of those jobs that does not have as many requirements as other professional type employment.
It's true. And once you get more experience, that experience helps you to get better and better positions. So yeah, it is good.
Yeah, it's like I'm no longer on an E2 visa, which is very beneficial for me. So it means that I can really try and work in more differentiated fields within the same ballpark of teaching English. But it does mean for me that if I want to step out into other things, I can do that. If it doesn't work out, I know that I'm always going to have some kind of fallback. I can go back to teaching English here if it doesn't work out. So that's like the biggest benefit and one of the biggest privileges that I have here.
Based off of where you're from and probably even how you look and your visa status, your experience, your age. Yeah.
I'm the only foreigner that is in my company.
Yeah.
And so not only do I look different, I mean I'm a white guy working in a company that's entirely composed of Koreans.
You're white?
I am.
Okay. Didn't know that. Okay.
Yes, but I as the only visibly foreign person working in the company, I automatically get treated differently at the company as well. Like, oh, he may not be able to follow everything that's going along in this meeting, or even recently there was a project where it was very specifically for Korean citizens only. And so they only wanted people who were native Korean speakers to participate in a certain project.
Sure.
And so I even confirmed with them. I was like, okay, so this is, just to be sure, this is something that I not only don't have to participate in, but something I can't participate in. And so I sort of feel that foreigner card being applied to me, rather than me using it, it's applied onto me sometimes at work.
Yeah. So it almost sounds like you have less responsibilities as your Korean coworkers, because for the example you just gave, you can't even participate in this project, right? And maybe other things too that like, oh, but we're having a meeting or whatever. It's like, oh, Chad, he doesn't have to join, you know?
Right, yes. So that's definitely been the case in a lot of situations.
I would love to hear now about the kind of negatives of being a non-Korean person, where it's like you can't escape being a foreigner.
For example, when I go out for dinner with my wife and I pay, I give the card, then they oftentimes give the card back to my wife. I don't know what the reason is for that. It's like they try to prevent dealing with me directly and prefer it indirectly.
Yeah.
And the same goes when we have a conversation, and I always try to speak Korean. So I ask a question in Korean, they answer it to my wife. So we have this awkward triangle-shaped conversation that I'm like, I'm included, but I feel very excluded.
What does your wife think about that?
annoying because it gives her extra work.
Yeah,
like
true.
She doesn't want to deal with answers of questions that I ask. She's like, no, he's talking to you. You can answer him. He's standing right there.
And I just want to say that we're not at all saying that we don't like Korean culture or anything like that. We're just simply having an honest conversation.
I'm from the Netherlands, like complaining is something we do anyway. So.
Yeah. I could give you 10 things I don't like about American culture too.
Yeah, and
right now.
Don't take it out of context. It's just it's part of living anywhere in the world.
Exactly. One thing that I don't enjoy so much is that sometimes I feel like I don't have a lot of authority about Korea among Koreans. For example, I was in Hongdae Station one time and an old woman was asking if the train she was about to get on was going to Sindorim. I told her, yes, this is the correct train to go to Sindorim, and she looked at me, didn't say anything, then asked a young Korean woman the same question, is this the right train for Sindorim? The young Korean woman looked on her phone and then confirmed, yes, this is indeed the right train for Sindorim. Then the old woman looked at me and said, 죄송합니다, and then walked away. And it didn't really feel very good because since I'm a non-Korean person living here, I can't give anybody directions. Even though I've been living in this area that I'm living in now for, over 7 years, I probably know it better than most Koreans in Seoul. I'm always probably seen as like a tourist or someone who's living here temporarily. But at the end of the day, this kind of thing is not a big deal.
So like I'm part of running groups, and so like it's a huge group of people that are all running together at official sessions. But then when it comes to like smaller groups that just sort of meet off on the side individually, they may think, Chad's not going to understand the nuances of what we're talking about, or he's not going to be able to follow as well. And so they just sort of automatically write you off a little bit and not include you, maybe subconsciously. They may not be doing it on purpose, but it's just something where they're like, he's not going to understand, so we don't want to be bothered, and so we just won't invite him, or we don't think to invite him. But I think especially for foreigners who want to stay here long term, it definitely like sort of wears on you a little bit, because you want to become more integrated with society and you want to create those connections. And when people just sort of maybe subconsciously write you off or don't include you, it's annoying. It's tough to bear for a long time. And I think in my situation, for me personally, I sort of get motivated by that a little bit. My determination grows stronger to sort of like force my way in. You're going to invite me. I'm going to try so hard and show you that I can, keep up and follow and be a part of this group that you're going to invite me.
Has that been a big motivating factor for your Korean studies?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
so when I talk,
I'm going to speak so well that you can't ignore me.
Yes, exactly.
For apartments, it was really difficult to get anyone to rent to me because I was foreign, and they all assumed that I was only going to be here for 1 year and that I would just leave. I've always had like very nice budongsan, actually. My most recent one, when I was moving to this area, he went above and beyond. He took us TC1, and I guess he felt really embarrassed about it because he called the lady in advance and he didn't say anything about the fact that my friend and I were foreign. He didn't say anything. He just said, we're going to come and see the apartment. Is it still available? Is that possible? And she was very, of course, come and see. And then as soon as we got there, she started making all of these excuses about how the owner of the building, he works really early in the morning and things. And it was really embarrassing for her because her granddaughter was there, and her granddaughter goes to an English hagwon. And her granddaughter greeted us in English. And her granddaughter at multiple times, because kids don't have filters, just said straight to her face, that's not true. My friend and I were communicating obviously with the budongsan in Korean, so he knew that we spoke Korean and he knew that we could understand. And she was saying all of these things, and then her granddaughter was basically negating all these things that she was saying. And then she said to us in English, she was just like, that's not true. And we were just like, okay, sweetie. Like,
you don't want to live there then?
No, the budongsan, he felt really embarrassed and he was really apologetic. And I was like, well, this isn't actually the worst that I've experienced. It's one of those things where I'm like, I understand it. I don't like it. And I think that it's really quite prejudiced, because why am I more of a liability when I say I'll pay my rent on time? It's just like, I have the money that you want me to put down. I have the rent. I'm willing and ready to sign a contract. Like, I've lived in the country for a very long time. I'm sponsored by myself. I want to be here. It can really weigh you down because it's like, it shouldn't be this hard. It shouldn't be this hard to find an apartment in a country. You have to do some serious convincing to get people to rent to you.
They just don't want to deal with any potential unknowns, I think.
Yeah.
And what are you working on these days, Bart?
It's been 4 years that I've been to North Korea, and I made my very first documentary series on YouTube.
Yeah.
I wrote a book about that experience. How I became a YouTuber, my relationship with my father who joined me on this trip. It's like a photo diary, a lot of nice photos that I took, behind the scenes stories. Like it has everything. It's written in Korean, and it's going to be published soon, maybe already published by the time this video comes up.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll put a link down below for anybody interested. Thank you so much, Bart. This was amazing.
You're welcome.
All right, see ya.
See ya.
Thank you so much for your thoughts. See you later.
Bye.
See you later.
Hi.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Did you enjoy this video? If so, please let me know in the comments down below. Once again, I'm Sean, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.